Two guys have the exact same 50 grand in their bank accounts. 20 years later, one is coasting, and the other is staring at a bank balance that'll make your stomach drop through the floor. Here's the catch. Both of them think they played the game right. And frankly, they're both wrong. Why? Because one forgot to count the brutal hours of hard yakka, and the other flat out forgot to count the zeros. If you're currently trying to decide whether to stack cash in real estate or drop it into the stock market, pay attention. The actual math will blow your mind. Let's keep this fair dinkum. Meet Jake and Marcus. Same age, same city, making 55 grand a year, and both sitting on a fresh $50,000 nest egg. The only difference? What they do with that cash. Jake wants something real. He drops his 50 grand as a 20% down payment on a modest $250,000 rental house. He signs a 30-year mortgage at 7% interest, making his monthly payment roughly $1,330. He snags a tenant paying $1,800 a month. On paper, that's $470 of pure monthly profit before spending a single loonie on anything else. Jake feels like an absolute financial genius. He's ready to double his way to early retirement. Marcus? Total opposite vibe. He takes his 50 grand and dumps it straight into a total stock market index fund. No leverage, no dodgy plumbing, no middle-of-the-night phone calls. He sets up an automated monthly transfer of $300 and literally forgets it exists. When his mates down at the pub ask what he's investing in, he says, "Index funds, mate." They nod politely, bored out of their minds, and talk about football instead. On day one, Jake's got a whole house and a flex to show off at dinner parties. Marcus has a boring confirmation email. It feels like Jake is absolutely crushing it. But feelings and actual math? They don't mix. For the first couple of years, Jake is living the ultimate landlord fantasy. Every single month, rent hits his account. He drives past the property, looks out the window and thinks, "Yep, I own that. No cap." On his taxes, he's deducting mortgage interest and depreciation, saving a few grand straight off his tax bill. His equity is climbing. Neighboring houses are selling for more. It feels physical, powerful, and proper smart. Meanwhile, Marcus is playing a completely different game. He logs into his brokerage app once a quarter, moves up a little, moves down a little. Year one, his 50 grand becomes 55,000. Year two, maybe 61 grand. It's snore-inducing. There's no physical key in his pocket, no tenant, no real estate to brag about while cracking a cold one. Just numbers bouncing around on a screen. Jake's friends think he's a mogul. Marcus's friends don't even bother asking. Social proof says Jake is winning by a mile. Now, let's peel back the curtain and look at the real numbers by year three. Jake has collected roughly $64,800 in rent. His mortgage checks add up to nearly 48 grand. So, he's sitting on about 17 grand in cash flow, right? Not even close. Subtract property taxes at 3 grand a year. Home insurance takes another 1,500 annually. Then reality strikes. A new water heater costs him $1,200. Fixing a leaky roof rips $2,800 out of his wallet. Oh, and he had 1 month of vacancy between tenants, costing $1,800 in lost rent, plus $600 to clean and relist the place. Because Jake self-manages to save money, he's taking calls at 10 p.m., doing weekend viewings, and organizing repairs on his lunch breaks. After real-world costs, Jake's actual net cash over 3 full years isn't 17 grand. It's a measly $2,000 to $4,000, and that doesn't account for a single second of his time. While Jake was fixing toilets on his weekends off, what was Marcus doing? Absolutely nothing. Marcus put in his initial 50 grand, added his $300 a month, and at a standard 10% historical return, his portfolio is sitting at roughly $76,000. Total time spent managing it, 0 hours, 0 phone calls, 0 late-night emergencies. But wait, don't write Jake off just yet. Because Jake has a secret weapon that stock investors can't easily touch: leverage. His $250,000 house has been quietly growing by 3 to 4% a year. It's now worth around 280 grand. His equity, the difference between what it's worth and what he owes the bank, has jumped to nearly $65,000. That is serious, tangible wealth, and he built it using the bank's money. That is the absolute power of real estate. However, there's a giant trap here. The monthly rent check is the only thing people flex on social media or at the weekend barbecue. Nobody talks about the silent profit killers eating that check alive before you pocket a single cent. The average rental property sits empty 1 month a year. That's a full month of zero income while the mortgage payment is still full price. The unwritten maintenance rule is budgeting 1 to 2% of the property value every single year. On a $250,000 house, that's up to $5,000 annually. 1 year, it's a quick faucet fix. The next, it's a $7,000 HVAC unit blowing up in August when your tenant threatens to walk. Roofs, furnaces, water heaters. These aren't surprises. They are scheduled financial hits, costing $5,000 to $15,000 a pop. If you hire a property manager, that's 10% of your rent gone instantly. Do it yourself? You just bought a part-time job. And we haven't even mentioned the single worst nightmare that can wreck a landlord's life in a matter of weeks. That nightmare? Bad tenants. A tenant who stops paying and plays the legal system can freeze your property for 6 months. Between unpaid rent and legal bills, a single bad tenant can incinerate 2 full years of hard-earned profit. Fast forward to year 5. Jake is deep in the trenches of landlording. He's on tenant number 3. He's shelled out $8,500 for a brand new roof and $1,400 for a emergency plumbing disaster. He bumped rent to $1,950, but rising property taxes and insurance gobbled most of it right back up. His real cash-on-cash return? Floating around a modest 3 to 5%. Not terrible, but nowhere near the 20% returns he was bragging about to his mates. Marcus? He's literally just chillin'. By year 7, without picking a single individual stock or trying to time the market, Marcus's account has quietly ballooned to around $140,000. This is where the magic flips. The compound interest curve is starting to go parabolic. The returns on his returns are now generating more raw wealth every single year than his actual job contributions. Look at what's happening underneath the hood. Jake's wealth is growing, but it's a slog. It takes constant energy, stress, and active upkeep. Marcus's wealth is growing on a classic hockey stick curve. Boring for the first 5 years, absolutely mind-blowing for the next 15. So, what happens when we hit the 10-year mark? You'd expect one of them to be miles ahead. The actual results at decade 1 might shock you. 10 years in. Let's inspect the balance sheets. Jake's rental property is now worth around $340,000. His remaining mortgage balance is down to $166,000. That leaves him with a massive $175,000 in equity. Sounds like a massive win, right? But remember to count what left his pocket. Over 10 years, after paying mortgage interest, maintenance, property taxes, insurance, and capex, Jake spent an extra $20,000 to $35,000 out of pocket just to keep the operation running. Now look at Marcus. With his steady $300 a month auto-invested at a 10% average return, his index fund portfolio is sitting at roughly $170,000. He put in $86,000 total over the decade. The rest? Pure, untouched compound growth. He spent 0 weekends replacing broken toilets, 0 phone calls from angry renters. At year 10, their net worth is practically identical. Jake might be a tiny hair ahead because of his initial loan leverage, but consider the hidden price tag. Jake traded hundreds of hours of his precious personal time, took on $250,000 in debt, and tied up his entire fortune in one single physical building on one specific street. Marcus spread his risk across thousands of the world's biggest companies and slept like a baby every single night. This is where the tracks completely split, because over the next 10 years, the difference between physical labor and pure compounding creates a gap so wide it changes everything. Fast forward to year 20. Jake's house is worth roughly $500,000. His mortgage is practically dead. He's sitting on nearly $450,000 in equity. After 2 decades of managing tenants, structural fixes, and tax bills, his net cash profit on top of his initial investment sits around $50,000. He worked hard for every single dollar. Now look at Marcus. His index portfolio, with 0 debt and 0 maintenance, has exploded to over $440,000. He put in a total of $122,000 over 20 years. Over $300,000 of his net worth is pure, free compound interest. On paper, their total net worth looks similar, around $400,000 to $500,000 each, but their lives couldn't be more different. Jake worked for his money. Marcus's money worked for him. Jake had high stress, physical labor, and locked up capital. Marcus had liquidity, peace of mind, and total freedom. And here is the kicker that changes the math forever. If Marcus had bumped his monthly investment by just $200, investing $500 a month instead of $300, his 20-year total jumps to over $600,000. Why? Because in the stock market, extra cash compounds exponentially. In real estate, scaling up usually means taking on another massive mortgage, finding another property, and literally doubling your workload. Now, if I ended the video right here, I'd be acting like every single stock market guru on the internet. Because the stock market isn't all sunshine and passive riches. It has brutal drawbacks people love to ignore. Stock market volatility is terrifying. In 2008, stocks plunged 37%. In March 2020, the market tanked 34% in a single month. Imagine seeing your $150,000 account drop to 95 grand in 4 weeks. That isn't just a number on a screen, it's gut-wrenching panic. And most normal investors panic sell at the bottom, locking in massive losses. Plus, index funds don't send you a fat monthly cash check to live on like a rental property does. So when does real estate actually win? First, in strong cash flow markets, where monthly rent is at least 1% of the purchase price. The math crushes it from day one. Second, house hacking. If you live in one unit and rent out the others, you live for free while building equity. The stock market can't offer you a roof over your head. Third, tax cheat codes. Real estate gives you legal tax shields like 1031 exchanges to swap properties tax-free, something regular stock accounts can't touch. Real estate isn't a bad asset, it's just deeply misunderstood. Jake and Marcus both made their choices based on surface-level hype. Jake thought property was an easy cheat code to wealth. Marcus hoped stocks would do all the heavy lifting. Neither sat down to calculate the real cost in dollars, hours, stress, and risk. The real trap isn't stocks, and it isn't real estate. The real trap is picking either one based on a viral video without running the full math for yourself. So next time a guru tells you one asset class always wins, ask them one simple question. Did you account for everything? Because the answer that counts every single detail is the only one that matters.